The first thing Elijah Banks noticed about Washington National Military Academy wasn't the iron gates or the massive seal etched into the stone courtyard. It was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the watchful, heavy kind. The kind that settled around new people like fog, thick and unwelcome. He stepped off the bus with a duffel slung over one shoulder, his posture upright, eyes steady. His uniform was pressed, shoes polished, and he moved like he belonged. But no one greeted him. No handshake, no name called out, just clip and boots on pavement, and side eyes. Inside the dormitory, everything gleamed polished floors, perfect bunks, chrome fixtures. It smelled like soap, discipline, and ambition. Elijah kept his head down, following the cadet guide through the maze of halls until they reached room B23. "You'll bunk here. Don't be late for morning drills," the cadet muttered, already halfway back down the hall. Elijah nodded once. "Yes, cadet." The door shut. He exhaled. The room was shared. 2 bunks, one already claimed. The top bed was neatly made with tight hospital corners. A row of medals hung from the frame below it. Elijah didn't ask. He unpacked in silence, placing a photo of his father, a Marine, stiff-backed in dress blues on the desk by the wall. That photo had followed him through every move, every school. It grounded him. Later that evening, Elijah walked into the mess hall with perfect posture and zero expectation. He moved like a ghost, silent, unnoticed. The other cadets didn't look twice, but he looked, and he remembered. Faces, names, rank pins. It wasn't fear, it was training. He sat alone, ate quick, and left before anyone could say a word. By the 3rd day, they started to notice him. Not because of anything he said, he rarely spoke. It was the way he moved, measured, deliberate, like every step had purpose. That unsettled people, especially Preston Hale. Preston was everything Elijah wasn't: blonde, loud, confident, son of a Navy rear admiral, and self-declared royalty of the Academy's junior class. He walked with swagger, joked in class, and never saluted unless someone was watching. He noticed Elijah, and he didn't like what he saw. "New kid walks like he's got a stick up his ass," Preston said to his squad one evening. "Bet he's one of those quiet freaks." The others laughed, not because it was funny, but because Preston had said it. In combat tactics, Elijah said few words. But when drills began, his movements were crisp. He handled himself with the kind of calm that couldn't be faked. During hand-to-hand practice, he countered a throw from a second-year cadet clean, sharp, and fast. No showboating, no reaction, just instinct. That's when Preston's curiosity turned into irritation. That evening, carved in faint lines across Elijah's locker door, were 3 words: "Civilian don't belong." He didn't report it. He didn't touch it. He just stared at it for 5 seconds, then opened his locker and moved on. Later, as he folded his PT uniform, his bunkmate, a quiet kid from Oregon named Dawson, asked softly, "You gonna say something?" Elijah didn't look up. What would that change? Dawson didn't answer. He didn't need to, because people like Elijah didn't show fear. They just waited, listened, watched. And sometimes they let silence speak louder than fists. Combat Training 102 started like every other morning at Washington National. Loud whistles, steel benches, and commands barked over cold concrete. Elijah Banks stood in line with the rest of Alpha Squadron, expression unreadable, posture textbook straight. The instructors rotated pairs for sparring elbow strikes, throws, controlled force only. "Elijah, you're with Reese," the drill sergeant barked. Reese Turner was a solid second year with a reputation for being hard contact friendly. He smirked as he stepped onto the mat. "You ready, Banks?" he said, just loud enough for nearby cadets to hear. Elijah nodded once. "Always." The whistle blew. Reese charged in, fast testing. Elijah sidestepped, parried, pivoted. The second time, Reese added a little elbow knot part of the drill. Elijah didn't react. On the 3rd move, Reese tried a sweep takedown. Elijah responded. He spun, dropped low, and flipped Reese hard but clean. Not brutal, not flashy, just efficient. Reese hit the mat with a slap and a grunt. Silence fell over the squad. Elijah stepped back, arms at his sides, waiting for the drill sergeant's call. It never came. Instead, he heard a slow clap. Damn, Preston Hale drawled from the edge of the mat. Didn't think Ghost Boy knew how to fight. A few laughs followed. Reese stood, rubbing his back, his face flushed. Preston approached, tossing Elijah a crooked grin. Careful, Banks. You make the rest of us look bad. They might actually expect effort. Elijah said nothing, just nodded and stepped off the mat. That night, carved deeper this time, were new words on his locker. Stay in your place. Still, Elijah didn't report it. He wiped it clean with a rag, no reaction. But the tension rippled. During mess hall, Preston started making small jabs loud enough to be heard. Maybe he's a plant, some experiment from the inner city training camps. Elijah the Eliminator. Blink and you're off the floor. It wasn't the jokes, it was the tone mocking, smiling, always just beneath the threshold of getting caught. And Elijah stayed silent, which only made them louder. Coach Hayes, their tactical instructor, caught Elijah alone one day after drill. You good, Cadet? Yes, sir. You handle yourself well. That's not always welcomed here. I'm not here to be welcomed, sir, just trained. The coach studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fair. Just don't let silence become permission. But that was the trick, because Elijah wasn't trying to be a hero. He wasn't trying to be a problem. He wasn't trying at all. He just wanted to get through the semester without proving anything to anyone. But in places like Washington National, quiet boys with strength became magnets. Not because they talked, but because their silence threatened the noise. And for Preston Hale, that was enough to turn a target into a mission. It was supposed to be a regular Thursday. Cold air, early drills, routine inspection. But Elijah felt it the moment he stepped into the weight room after evening chow. The room was too quiet, too empty, and the shadows near the back lockers were just a little too still. He should have turned around, but he didn't. He moved forward, slow, alert. Then he heard it. Yo, Banks, he turned. Preston Hale stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the far wall like he'd been waiting all day. Beside him were Cade Myers and Griffin Shaw, both upperclassmen, both part of the elite cadet rifle team. Hands in their pockets, smirking like this was a game. Elijah didn't speak. He just set his gym bag down and kept his distance. You walk like you've already won something, Preston said, stepping off the wall. Makes people think you're better than the rest of us. I never said that, Elijah replied, voice steady. You didn't have to. Preston glanced at the others. You think this is a city block? You think you can just come in, toss people around, and stay quiet like that makes you noble? Elijah didn't answer. He knew that tone, he'd heard it before. Different zip code, same ego. Cade took a step closer. Or maybe you're just scared to talk. That it? I'm not here for this, Elijah said. Yeah, you are, Preston growled. Right here, right now. Then it happened. Cade shoved Elijah quick, unbalanced, sudden. Elijah stumbled back but caught himself. Don't, he warned. Griffin laughed, circling. Look at him, thinking he's some kind of Jedi or something. Then Cade swung. A wild hook meant to connect, not to teach. It didn't, because Elijah stepped inside, pivoted, and dropped him flat with a clean sweep and forearm pin. The room shifted. Griffin rushed in, Elijah blocked, disarmed, stepped back. Preston hesitated, but ego didn't let him stop. He charged like a linebacker. Elijah didn't flinch. He slipped under, landed an elbow into Preston's ribs, turned, and dropped him to one knee with a twist of his wrist. It was over in 12 seconds. Then silence, except for the quiet click of a phone being slipped into someone's pocket. 10 minutes later, Elijah stood in front of Sergeant Callahan's office, breathing steady. Cadet Banks, we received a report, Callahan said, voice clipped, that you were involved in a physical altercation with 3 cadets. Care to explain? They cornered me, but you laid them out. I defended myself, minimal force. Video says otherwise. Elijah blinked. Video? Someone captured it, no audio, just you, standing over Hale and Myers on the floor. And just like that, the story had a shape, and Elijah was the sharpest edge. The summons came the next morning. Printed, formal, cold. Cadet Elijah Banks is required to appear before the Disciplinary Review Board on Monday at 0700 hours. Allegation, physical misconduct unbecoming of a cadet. He read the line twice, then folded the letter and tucked it into his locker. He didn't speak a word at breakfast, but the whispers already had a head start. By noon, people were watching him differently. Not openly hostile, just cautious, like he was a ticking grenade with the pin half out. In formation strategy class, someone muttered, "That's the guy who beat up Preston." In the mess hall, the table where Elijah usually sat was occupied when he arrived. No one made eye contact. No one offered a seat. He took his tray to the far edge of the room and ate alone. That weekend, the video went viral, at least inside campus networks. It was short, silent, shaky. Elijah stepping over Cade, Preston dropping to a knee, Griffin backing off. No context, no sound, no shove, no first punch, just impact. Preston didn't need to say a word. Other cadets filled in the blanks for him. Monday came like a thundercloud. Elijah stood in front of a long table inside the review chamber. Behind it sat three officers, Lieutenant Colonel Hardin, Master Sergeant Valdez, and retired Navy Captain Ellis. Each had a thick folder. Each wore the same unreadable expression. The room was sterile. No jury, no audience, just judgment. "Cadet Banks," Hardin began, "do you understand the nature of this hearing?" "Yes, sir." "You're accused of initiating violent contact with multiple cadets. Do you contest this?" "I acted in self-defense." "Were you struck first?" "Yes." "Do you have witnesses?" Elijah's jaw tightened. "No one who will speak." Valdez leaned forward. "The video we reviewed shows you as the dominant force, calm, controlled, trained, doesn't look like a panicked kid. Looks like someone who knows how to fight." Elijah nodded. "I do." Ellis raised an eyebrow. "Where did you learn?" "My father, Marine Corps, taught me control first." Valdez scribbled something. Hardin tapped the folder. "We've received statements suggesting this wasn't the first time you've been involved in conflict at a prior institution." Elijah's voice was sharp now. "That's false. But it's circulating. And in the absence of full evidence, rumors shape perception." Elijah didn't flinch. "Then maybe you should ask why the full evidence isn't here." The room went quiet. Ellis sat back. "Do you regret your actions?" Elijah looked up. "I regret not stopping them sooner." Valdez blinked. Hardin stared. Then Ellis asked softly, "What would you have done differently?" Brought a camera. Afterward, Elijah sat alone on the bleachers near the empty field. He watched wind ripple through the flag above the barracks. He didn't feel defeated, but he didn't feel free either. Because somewhere in that room he saw it. Not fear of what he'd done, but fear of what he represented. Strength without permission, discipline without apology, and truth that refused to shrink. Naomi Lynn wasn't the kind of cadet who drew attention. She ranked in the top 5% of her class, ran 6-minute miles, and spent most of her free time in the tactical strategy room, reviewing surveillance footage for drills or assisting instructors with simulation breakdowns. She saw everything, but rarely said a word. That Friday evening, she sat in the monitor room alone, reviewing a routine corridor feed when a label caught her eye. "Locker Wing, South Cam 4, 1800 Oikars." It was from the day of the fight. Her finger hovered over the timeline. She hadn't meant to look, but now that she had, she couldn't stop. She watched Cade shove Elijah, saw Preston move, watched Elijah warn them, not once, but twice. And then she watched it all unfold, clean, measured, precise. Not rage, not revenge, control. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the monitor like it had just spoken. Because this wasn't just evidence, it was clarity. The next morning, Naomi walked straight to the administrative office and requested a meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Hardin. When she entered, she saluted without flinching. "Sir, I'd like to speak about the Banks investigation." Hardin looked up, surprised. "You're not involved." "I was reviewing tactical system archives. I found footage not included in the disciplinary packet." Hardin straightened. "Are you suggesting the evidence was incomplete?" "I'm stating it, sir." She slid a USB drive across the desk. "South Cam 4. You'll want to see it." He eyed her carefully. "Why now, Cadet Lynn?" Naomi hesitated, then answered not with fear but with fire. "Because I watched someone tell the truth, and no one listened. That's not the code we're trained to protect." By Monday morning, everything had changed. Elijah sat in the same review room, but this time Naomi Lynn sat to his right. Lieutenant Colonel Hardin addressed the board before the session began. "We've received supplemental footage provided by Cadet Lynn From the Academy's own security archive. It presents new context. The room dimmed, the screen lit up. Cade's shove, Elijah's restraint, the first wild punch, and finally Elijah's precise defensive response. When the lights came back on, no one spoke, until Captain Ellis leaned forward and said, "Why wasn't this footage reviewed before?" Naomi answered, "Because no one thought to ask for what didn't fit the narrative." She didn't look angry, just disappointed. Valdez cleared his throat. "And you, Cadet Banks? Why didn't you tell us about the cameras?" Elijah answered, calm as ever. "I figured if no one wanted to believe me, they wouldn't believe video either." After the hearing, as the board deliberated, Elijah stood outside alone near the flagpole. Naomi approached quietly. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She shook her head. "No, but I had to live with it whether I did or not." He looked at her, really looked past the ribbons, past the reputation. "You ever break the code before?" he asked. She gave a half smile. "Maybe the code's broken already." The review board reconvened the next morning. No chairs shifted, no one whispered. The weight of the new footage hung like a storm cloud, silent, undeniable, and ready to burst. Elijah Banks stood again, but this time he wasn't alone in the way he had been. Naomi Lynn sat quietly near the front. Lieutenant Colonel Hardin adjusted his reading glasses, then tapped the printed transcript in front of him. "We have reviewed the full footage submitted by Cadet Lynn," he said, his voice deliberate. "It clearly shows Cadet Banks did not instigate the altercation. He was cornered, physically provoked, and responded within a controlled, defensive framework." Valdez cleared his throat. "To be honest, Mr. Banks, what you demonstrated out there wasn't just control, it was advanced training." Ellis leaned in. "Tell me, Cadet, when you flipped Myers, when you neutralized Hale with a pivot to elbow drop, why didn't you finish the fight?" Elijah met his eyes. "Because I wasn't there to win. I was there to walk away." Ellis nodded slowly, almost like he hadn't expected that answer, but needed to hear it. Then Hardin folded his hands. "There's something else that concerns this board. Not about your actions, but your silence. Why didn't you speak up earlier? Why wait to defend yourself until the walls were closing in?" Elijah paused. "I was taught that honor doesn't shout." He scanned the faces in front of him, calm, measured. "But maybe I made a mistake. Maybe staying quiet let the wrong story grow too loud." He looked directly at Preston Hale, seated near the back of the room with a bruise fading on his chin and a pride he hadn't figured out how to bury yet. Elijah turned back to the board. "I'm not perfect, but I know this strength without control is just chaos. And silence, if it protects a lie, is betrayal. I didn't come here to be feared or liked. I came to earn what this place claims to teach: discipline, honor, accountability." He stepped back, just one pace, and then said the line that would echo in that room long after the uniforms left it. "Honor isn't in the first strike, it's in the last reason you decide to throw one." The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was stunned. It was changed. Later that afternoon, the board issued its ruling. No expulsion, no mark on record, no disciplinary action. Elijah Banks had acted in line with the code of conduct and had demonstrated restraint beyond what was expected of a cadet under attack. The final note from Captain Ellis read, "If more students understood discipline like Banks, we wouldn't need half these hearings." Preston wasn't punished publicly, but in the eyes of the school, something had shifted. He didn't walk the halls with the same sway, didn't laugh as loud, didn't look Elijah in the eye again. And that said enough. The ruling came through officially by evening. No punishment, no black mark, no words like expulsion or violation of conduct in Elijah's file. But if he expected relief, he didn't feel it, because surviving something didn't mean you walked away untouched. By Tuesday, everyone knew the verdict, but the hallways still parted when he passed. Not from fear, not exactly, more like confusion, like no one was sure what to make of him now. Some saw a hero, others saw a warning. Elijah wasn't the transfer ghost anymore. He was the cadet who flipped 3 upperclassmen in 12 seconds, stayed calm under fire, and walked out cleaner than anyone expected. And that kind of power, it unsettled people. In morning drills, no one challenged him. In the mess hall, the table near the window was always coincidentally empty when he walked in. And in formation strategy, the cadet who used to mock his silence now took notes from the back row. But it wasn't praise, it was distance. Coach Hayes pulled Elijah aside after sparring one day. You carry yourself different now. I don't feel different. That's because you haven't changed. They have. Elijah didn't respond. Hayes waited, then added, takes more strength to rebuild trust than it does to break a nose. You know that, right? Elijah gave a small nod. I didn't do any of this to be trusted. Hayes smiled faintly. Exactly why they probably should. The real shift came quiet, subtle, like rust finally cracking off old armor. Naomi Lynn got assigned to lead a new code of conduct training seminar and chose Elijah as her co-presenter. One afternoon, a younger cadet, nervous, stuttering, asked Elijah if he could join his evening strength sessions. Another day, Coach Hayes walked into the gym and found 5 cadets doing shadow drills beside Elijah without being told to. He didn't say anything, just watched. Change wasn't announced. It was practiced, but some things didn't change. Preston Hale kept his head down. Cade and Griffin stopped speaking to each other, and no one posted funny videos anymore. Elijah noticed. He also noticed that people still flinched when he walked by too fast, still whispered when he wasn't looking. But he also saw one freshman stick up for a classmate getting mocked near the mess hall. He saw a drill instructor actually pause when calling the cadets weak in a tone that used to go unchecked. He saw Coach Hayes write "Control Force" on the board and nod toward him without a word. Little things, nothing headline-worthy, but real. And for the first time, Elijah started to believe maybe this place could change. Not because they wanted to, but because they had seen what it looked like when someone stood their ground and didn't break. The auditorium was packed. Rows of cadets sat in perfect formation, uniform sharp, back straight, not because they were told to, but because something about this morning felt different. Elijah Banks stood behind the curtain, hands loosely clasped, eyes closed. He hadn't asked to speak, but they asked him. Cadet Banks, Commandant Rayner had said, we'd like a student to speak on the code, on honor, on what it really means. Elijah had paused, then nodded once. No questions. Now, standing just out of view, he could hear his name echo through the room. Cadet Elijah Banks. He stepped out. The applause wasn't wild, wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And that was enough. He approached the mic, no notes, no speech in hand, just his voice. I'm not sure why I'm up here. A few quiet chuckles. I'm not the loudest cadet. I'm not from a military family. I don't have the highest scores or the cleanest record. He looked out over the crowd. But I've been tested, and I've stayed standing. A quiet stillness fell. People say honor is earned, through medals, through obedience, through silence. But sometimes honor is what you hold on to, when people are trying to take it from you. He let the words breathe. When I got here, I thought being quiet would protect me, that if I didn't speak, didn't push back, didn't cause trouble, I'd be left alone. He scanned the front row. Naomi sat there, still and focused. I was wrong, he continued. Silence doesn't always keep the peace. Sometimes it protects the lie. A few heads nodded now. They tried to paint me as something I wasn't. Dangerous, aggressive, out of control. And for a while, I let them. He took a breath. But then someone saw the truth and chose to speak. He didn't look at Naomi. He didn't have to. And I realized honor isn't just how you fight. It's what you fight for. He stepped back from the mic just slightly, then leaned in once more. If you remember one thing from me, let it be this. His voice dropped, calm and steady. Never confuse being loud with being right. Never confound being quiet with being weak. And never let anyone tell your story before you do. He stepped back. The room was silent. Then, hands clapped, one by one, then rose, then the whole room. And this time it wasn't respect out of rank. It was recognition that something had shifted, not just in Elijah, but in all of them. Later that day, as the cadets filed out into the brisk morning air, a first year jogged up to Elijah. Sir, he said, eyes wide, that was real. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Real? Yeah, like I've never heard anyone say it like that. Elijah gave the smallest of nods. Then listen close. That's your first lesson. The cadet smiled. Can I train with you sometime? We don't train to fight, Elijah said. We train to stay ready. The cadet straightened. I want that. Elijah looked at him, saw a younger version of himself. Then lesson one starts now. Stand tall, even when silence is easier. They walked across the quad together, not as leader and follower, but as proof that sometimes standing still is the loudest thing you can do.